Hi everyone, happy Sunday. This week we are reading Genesis chapters 46 through 48. All right, let's get started. Migration to Egypt. Israel, Jacob, set out with all that was his. When he arrived at Beersheba, he offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. There God spoke to Israel in a vision by night, called, "Jacob, Jacob." "Here I am," he answered. Then he said, "I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for there I will make you a great nation. Not only will I go down to Egypt with you, I will also bring you back here, after Joseph has closed your eyes." So Jacob departed from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel put their father and their wives and children on the wagons that Pharaoh had sent for his transport. They took with them their livestock and their possessions they had acquired in the lands of Canaan. Thus Jacob and all his descendants migrated to Egypt. His sons and his grandsons, his daughters and his granddaughters, all his descendants, he took with him to Egypt. And then I'm going to skip verses 8 through 25. It's a bunch of genealogies with a bunch of names. If you want to read them, they're in the link in the description box. All right, verse 26. Jacob's people who migrated to Egypt, his direct descendants, not counting the wives of Jacob's sons, numbered 66 persons in all. Together with Joseph's sons who were born to him in Egypt, 2 persons, all the people comprising Jacob's family who had come to Egypt amounted to 70 persons in all. Israel had sent Judah ahead to Joseph so that he might meet him in Goshen. On his arrival in the region of Goshen, Joseph hitched the horses to his chariot and rode to meet his father Israel in Goshen. As soon as he saw him, he flung himself on his neck and wept a long time in his arms. And Israel said to Joseph, "At last I can die, now that I have seen for myself that Joseph is still alive." Joseph then said to his brothers and his father's household, "I will go and inform Pharaoh, telling him, my brothers and my father's household, whose home in the land of Canaan have come to me. The men are shepherds, having long been keepers of livestock, and they have brought with them their flocks and herds, as well as everything else they own. So when Pharaoh summons you and asks what your occupation is, you must answer, 'We, your servants, like our ancestors, have been keepers of livestock from the beginning until now, in order that you may stay in the region of Goshen, since all shepherds are abhorrent to the Egyptians." Chapter 47. Settlement in Goshen. Joseph went and told Pharaoh, "My father and my brothers have come from the land of Canaan with their flocks and herds and everything else they own, and they are now in the region of Goshen." He then presented to Pharaoh 5 of his brothers whom he had selected from their full number. When Pharaoh asked them what their occupation was, they answered, "We, your servants, like our ancestors, are shepherds." "We have come," they continued, "in order to stay in this country, for there is no pasture for your servants' flocks in the land of Canaan, so severe has the famine been there. Please, therefore, let your servants settle in the region of Goshen." Pharaoh said to Joseph, "They may settle in the region of Goshen, and if you know any of them to be qualified, you may put them in charge of my own livestock." Thus, when Jacob and his sons came to Joseph in Egypt, and Pharaoh, king of Egypt, heard about it, Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Now that your father and brothers have come to you, the land of Egypt is at your disposal. Settle your father and brothers in the pick of the land." Then Joseph brought his father and Jacob and presented him to Pharaoh. After Jacob had paid his respects to Pharaoh, Pharaoh asked him, "How many years have you lived?" Jacob replied, "The years I have lived as a wayfarer amount to 130. Few and hard have been these years of my life, and they do not compare with the years that my ancestors lived as wayfarers." Then Jacob bade Pharaoh farewell and withdrew from his presence. As Pharaoh had ordered, Joseph settled his father and brothers and gave them holdings in Egypt on the pick of the land in the region of the Ramses. And Joseph sustained his father and brothers and his father's whole household, down to the youngest, with food. Joseph's land policy. Since there was no food in any country because of the extreme severity of the famine, and the lands of Egypt and Canaan were languishing from hunger, Joseph gathered in, as payment for the rations that were being dispensed. Remember, there were 7 years of prosperity before the famine that God told Joseph about in a dream, or Pharaoh's dream, and Joseph interpreted it. So they knew they had to store up a lot of their grain, and so they had plenty of food. Joseph gathered in as payment for the rations that were being dispensed all the money that was to be found in Egypt and Canaan, and he put it in Pharaoh's palace. When all the money in Egypt and Canaan was spent, all the Egyptians came to Joseph pleading, "Give us food, or we shall perish under your eyes, for our money is gone." "Since your money is gone," replied Joseph, "give me your livestock, and I will sell you bread in return for your livestock." So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and he sold them food in return for their horses, their flocks of sheep, and herds of cattle, and their donkeys. Thus he got them through that year with bread in exchange for all their livestock. When that year ended, they came to him in the year following and said, "We cannot hide from my lord that with our money spent and our livestock made over to my lord, there is nothing left to put at my lord's disposal except our bodies and our farmland. Why should we and our land perish before your very eyes? Take us and our land in exchange for food, and we will become Pharaoh's slaves and our land his property. Only give us seed that we may survive and not perish, and that our land may not turn into waste." Thus Joseph acquired all the farmland of Egypt for Pharaoh, since with the famine too much for them to bear, every Egyptian sold his field, so the land passed over to Pharaoh, and the people were reduced to slavery from one end of Egypt's territory to the other. This is important to remember. Pharaoh now owns all the land, and the people are all his slaves now, except for the priests, because only the priests' lands Joseph did not take over. Since the priests had a fixed allowance from Pharaoh and lived off the allowance Pharaoh had granted them, they did not have to sell their land. Joseph told the people, "Now that I have acquired you and your land for Pharaoh, here is your seed for sowing the land. But when the harvest is in, you must gift a fifth of it to Pharaoh, while you keep 4/5 as seed for your fields, as food for yourselves and your families, and as food for your children." "You have saved our lives," they answered. "We are grateful to my lord that we can be Pharaoh's slaves." Thus Joseph made it law for the land of Egypt, which is still in force, that 1/5 of its produce should go to Pharaoh. Only the land of the priests did not pass over to Pharaoh. Jacob blesses Ephraim and Manasseh. Thus Israel settled in the land of Egypt, in the region of Goshen. There they acquired property, were fertile, and increased greatly. Jacob lived in the land of Egypt for 17 years. The span of his life came to 147 years. When the time approached for Israel to die, he called his son Joseph, and said to him, "If you really wish to please me, put your hand under my thigh as a sign of your constant loyalty to me. Do not let me be buried in Egypt. When I lie down with my ancestors, have me taken out of Egypt and buried in their burial place." "I will do as you say," he replied. But his father demanded, "Swear it to me." So Joseph swore to him. Then Israel bowed at the head of the bed. Chapter 48. Sometime afterward, Joseph was informed, "Your father is failing." So he took along with him his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Ephraim. When Jacob was told, "Your son Joseph has come to you," he rallied his strength and sat up in bed. Jacob said to Joseph, "God Almighty appeared to me in Luz in the land of Canaan, and blessing me, he said, 'I will make you fertile and numerous and raise you into an assembly of tribes, and I will give this land to your descendants after you as a permanent possession. Your 2 sons, therefore, who were born to you in the land of Egypt before I joined you here, shall be mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine as much as Reuben and Simeon are mine. Progeny born to you after them shall remain yours, but their heritage shall be recorded in the names of their brothers. I do this because when I was returning from Paddan, your mother Rachel died, to my sorrow, during the journey in Canaan, while we were still a short distance from Ephrath, and I buried her there on the way to Ephrath, that is, Bethlehem." When Israel saw Joseph's sons, he asked, "Who are these?" "They are my sons," Joseph answered his father, "whom God has given me here." "Bring them to me," said his father, "that I may bless them." Now Israel's eyes were dim from age, and he could not see well. When Joseph brought his sons close to him, he kissed and embraced them. Then Israel said to Joseph, "I never expected to see your face again, and now God has allowed me to see your descendants as well." Joseph removed them from his father's knees and bowed down before him with his face to the ground. Then Joseph took the 2 Ephraim with his right hand and Israel's left, and Manasseh with his left hand to Israel's right, and led them to him. But Israel, crossing his hands, put one hand over the other when he went to bless them, one hand on top. No, I lost my spot. But Israel, crossing his hands, put out his right hand and laid it on the head of Ephraim, although he was the younger, and his left hand on the head of Manasseh, although he was the firstborn. Then he blessed them with these words: May the God in whom ways my father Abraham and Isaac walked, in whose ways my father Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd from my birth to this day, the angel who has delivered me from harm, bless these boys, that in them my name be recalled, and the names of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and they may become teeming multitudes upon the earth. When Joseph saw that his father had laid his right hand on Ephraim's head, this seemed wrong to him, so he took hold of his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's, saying, That is not right, father. The other one is the firstborn. Lay your right hand on his head. But his father resisted. I know it, son, he said. I know that one too shall become a tribe, and he too shall be great. Nevertheless, his younger brother shall surpass him, and his descendants shall become a multitude of nations. So when he blessed them that day and said, By you shall the people of Israel pronounce blessings, may they say, God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh. He placed Ephraim before Manasseh. Then Israel said to Joseph, I am about to die, but God will be with you and will restore you to the land of your fathers. As for me, I give to you, as to the one above his brothers, Shechem, which I captured from the Amorites with my sword and bow. We're going to stop there. We just have 2 chapters left in Genesis, and we will do those next week. So on that note, let us close with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. All right, hope you have a great week, and I will see you next Sunday. Bye-bye.